Greetings, fellow mercenaries. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a new series playing Wartales. If you would like to skip the game's overview, the details of this series, or the tutorial information, please use YouTube chapters. Wartales is an open-world RPG in which you lead a group of mercenaries in their search for wealth across a massive medieval world. You explore, recruit companions, collect bounties, and uncover mysteries as a vibrant and capable warband of mercenaries. Specific to this series, I am playing with no mods and no DLCs. The starting choices are that we are a group of friends looking for adventure. So let's start setting this up as I tell it to you. So there are three major choices that you can make at the start of the game, and it changes your starting settings. Some of them are disabled because I don't have the DLCs enabled, but Apprentice Friends Looking for Adventure starts you off with influence and a lack of raw materials to repair your gear, and it also changes the classes that you can start with. So I'm going to be starting with a swordsman, archer, ranger, and brute, but as you can see, the other choices have different starting companions. The next choice here, I am choosing that we are used to long walks. Used to long walks helps to reduce travel fatigue, but there is cunning fighters and shows incredible resilience, etc., etc. And for the last and final one, a somewhat meek appearance. You might have been able to tell I'm just picking the top options every time, but I actually rather like the top options. So rather meek appearance is that we carry a little bit less as a party, instead of unhappiness or bad luck, etc. Now, there are two major ways to play this game. There is adaptive exploration, which scales roughly to your party level regularly, so that you can explore the entire continent without having to worry about the difficulty levels of the enemies. They will always match roughly your own. But in this case, I'm playing the region-locked exploration. The reason I did this is so that there are going to be places that are too hard for us and places that are too easy for us. We can grind XP if we really need to, and then it also allows the story to progress in sort of an organic fashion, rather than adaptive exploration where you might jump around and miss things. The starting region that we're going to choose is Tiltren County, which is the lowest level for the region-locked experience, so we'll be starting in the level 1 region. And then I'm new to this game, so experienced, and save, free save mode. Limited would be that you can only save once, and then you revert back to the town if you have to load, and then Iron Man is, well, pretty obvious. So here are the starting characters. We have very little in the way of choosing their actual classes, because that's determined by the type of set out you have. But we have a swordsman, an archer, a ranger, a brute, and a pony. And I'm going to be setting them up a little bit. Now, I was thinking that I would actually not choose their starting traits, because I'm not aiming to try to min-max this series, not necessarily, especially not for the starting 4. So you could definitely min-max this start here if you wanted, but I am just going to do random, for better or for worse. However, the 5 starting characters, if we also include the pony, are raffled off already to my Patreon patrons. So I am going to be naming them off as such. But I'm not going to be customizing the way they look, because we could spend hours on that, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to make shield the brute with the shield. That kind of makes more sense to me. And then we've got Diamond here, and then Macho the pony. There we go. This is our starting crew. Your companions are off in search of adventure. After a few days of quietly traveling along, their only feat was not getting lost as they have reached their destination. Here, surely, awaits some novel and exciting quest that will stir up the uneventful lives of bored apprentices. Adventure awaits at the end of the road, For those who make it there alive, that is. So before I start actually digging into the gameplay, I'm going to give you a very quick primer about the UI and about some other ways to level up your characters and the like. Again, I am new to the game, so not everything is going to be perfectly explained. But in the top left here, we have the company name. So we are the Paladins of Misfortune. You do later on get the chance to rename this. So if you're bothered by the name, in a few hours, we will be able to rename ourselves. And then it also, if you click this, it will show you all of the individual party members, the companions in your party. And then if you mouse over it, it will show you any of the bonuses that you received, like from gear or resting, equipment bonuses, etc. The next is knowledge. So knowledge in this game works in a very interesting way, where when you discover new things or craft new things, you're given knowledge points that you can use to unlock bonuses. So some of the bonuses might be like you pay your troops a little bit less, or you eat a little bit less. And then some of the bonuses are more significant. So one of the most significant ones would be career plans, allowing you to spend influence to level up more points than you otherwise would be able to. An incredibly important one that I'll probably get pretty early on. There's also a bunch of different crafting. Initially, we only have the workshop crafting to be able to make some basic fish hooks and lockpicks and the like. But this becomes very important when you're trying to manage your camp. And this will be shown in detail later on. And then in terms of what actually offers you knowledge, it is a whole bunch of the discovery stuff. So once I get into that, we'll see it. But this little like white diamond shape above my head is sort of like a, hey, you gain knowledge for doing this thing. The next one is each region has its own scenario, and you follow its progress here. So there are major choices to be made throughout each individual continent in the game. So right now we're in Tiltren County, which is an independent state. And there is locations to be discovered, locations to be completed when there are side quests or small quests associated, and then also major choices to be made, which will affect the destiny of this individual area, so that our company is making its mark. The next tab is suspicion. When you commit crimes and the like, you have a wanted level. Everyone should be probably familiar with wanted levels, and as the stars go up, the guards get more pissy. Then above, we have whether it's day or night, the day and the time, and then on the right, there would be weather condition if there was weather condition. And then this bar is relatively important, which is the troop fatigue. Your troops don't necessarily have to sleep once a day, but when they get tired, they have to sleep, or you suffer a lot of penalties and etc. So when this bar runs out, it's time to set camp, and ideally you want to set camp somewhere it's safe. Above that is the compass rose. One important thing is like you can rotate the map here. So, and there's a lot of locations and you can rotate the map there as well. I'll show you once we get to the first location. Top right, we have happiness. So when happiness drops below a minimum, depending on your difficulty level and some other settings and traits, companions will want to leave your troop. So obviously you don't want to disband your mercenary company. And ideally, you want your happiness to be 15 or so because you gain extra influence for having a very happy company, and then they also level up faster. Then you have your influence. Influence can be used to do a whole lot of things. So it can be used to recruit new people into your warband. It can be used to negotiate better contracts and bounties. It can be used to make a whole lot of decisions, etc., etc. Then to the right of that is valor points. So valor points are, how to describe these? So the game says that you can use your valor points in combat to use certain skills. You regain these each time you rest. So they're essentially, many of the characters will have very powerful abilities, but they will require valor points to be able to use them. So for instance, to be able to attack an extra time in a turn, things like that. And the valor points can be gained through a bunch of different choices to be made. So if we take a look at an individual character here, like Cathanon, for instance, in his level up, once he hits level 3, I could get valor points for when I'm engaged in combat or valor points when I attack several enemies at once, or valor points when I engage an enemy. So there's different ways to gain valor points, and they're definitely worth focusing on, because if you have a lot of valor points, you have a lot of options for you in combat. Basically, they're like combat special ability points. Some of the valor points, which are more orange colored, are valor points you get from resting, and then you have temporary valor points in each individual fight that are yellow colored. To the right of that is your food. Obviously, your companions need to be fed. If you don't feed them, big problems. So make sure you have food stocks. And yes, there indeed is cooking. And then over is your crowns or coins. And every 3 rests, you have to pay your troops. One of the reasons I took on the We Like Long Walks is that we can rest less frequently and therefore pay wages less frequently. I know, it's kind of ridiculous. It's just the way it is. Then down here, we have camping. And we're not going to be camping right now. I could unpause and hit camp. But the way the camp works is that your camp has a bunch of things that you can do while you're at camp. So you might be able to cook, you might be able to rest, you might be able to craft things, you might be able to chop down trees or analyze runes or, you know, tend to the horses, etc. And camping is a rather important function of the game. All right, so beyond that, we have the inventory. So we start off with raw materials to be able to repair our armor when it gets damaged, medicine for injuries, apples, and bread. Pretty straightforward. I've already shown the world map, but here's the world map, and it will show you the locations discovered and completed. I'm not necessarily going to try to 100% every continent, or every county, rather, but I will not move on until we've actually solved the big overriding goal of the county, because that's how the game is supposed to naturally progress. Then we have the compendium. This is part of the knowledge here, and this will unlock a lot more information as we grow it. But for instance, in the workshop, we have making a better campfire, which makes people happier, or making a better workshop, which can dismantle low-tier gear, or a hitching post, or a cooking pod, or a tent, so on and so forth. And they all require raw materials, which I should get to now. So each character can also have professions. Initially, we only have knowledge of the tinkering profession, which is working at the workshop in the camp, but eventually there's a lot more professions, and ideally you're going to want at least one person of every profession for the most part. Some of the professions are raw resource gathering, like woodcutting or mining, which might not sound all that sexy, but it's really necessary to have a lot of raw resources in order to build up your camp, and building up your camp makes your people happier and stronger. And then you have like processing resources like cooking or blacksmithing. And then you have things like lockpicking and alchemy and so on and so forth. And then last, which is easy to overlook but very powerful, is paths. So your paths will unlock very powerful boons for... Here, let me hide the overlay so you can actually see this in full. Your paths will unlock very powerful boons for your company, fulfilling the challenges. So for instance... I get some path points for crafting tier 1 weapons and armor, or completing missions, or allowing enemies to flee after battle. And then there is and that's power and glory path, and then there's the trade and craftsmanship path, there is the crime and chaos path, and the mysteries and wisdom path. And then as a result of this, what ends up happening is, once you unlock enough path points for each individual section, you will gain access to huge, very powerful bonuses for your company on the right. And I am going to be probably selecting a subset of the types of bonuses that we get when we unlock these. I would like to give you the option to vote on them, but there's going to be way too many options for me to include them all, because sometimes there's like a dozen plus. And that's basically the entire UI. So let's jump into our first fight. So taking a look at the map here, it is possible to traverse mountains, but we would need to craft climbing gear. So instead, what is obvious is that we are due to face off with these deserters here. Now the amount of enemies that you see relates and correlates to the amount of enemies that you're going to have to fight, and then the enemy type can be displayed above their heads. It doesn't really necessarily tell you, like if I mouse over them and it's not like, hey, they're deserters. Other things to note. is that there's going to be people moving around. Not all parties moving around are necessarily enemies, so don't go like attacking everybody. And then anything that is glimmering and glowing on the map here are collectibles. So for instance, I just picked up some comfrey, which is a common flower. And then I'm heading over to some iron ore. But instead, we're going to be waylaid by bandits. So this tells me the type of the enemy, the level of the enemy, and what specifics. So we have a hoodlum and a poacher, like a rogue and a hunter or archer. When your turn comes, play any unit you haven't used in the round. You can find out which enemy will then come into play, repair your strategy. So I'll explain this a little bit more. At the start of a fight, you are given the option of deploying your troops in any of these predetermined locations. So for instance, if I have an archer over here, I might want to rush the archer to lock them down so that they can't use their bow. And then I have a hoodlum over here, so I might want to send shield in to lock down the hoodlum so he can't stab someone more vulnerable. So here is our starting characters, and I'm going to square off 2 versus that guy and 2 versus this guy. So the way the combat order works is right here, as you can see, I can play 2 moves of any of my characters, and then the poacher takes a turn, 2 moves of the remaining 2 characters, and then the hoodlum takes a turn, and then the end of round. So it is turn-based, but you can choose who takes said turn. Once you are done deploying where you want to start, you also should keep in mind, and it's not relevant for this specific battlefield, but a lot of battlefields will have items that you can pick up, like javelins that you can throw at the enemy, or it might have a pit of fire or mud puddles. There's a lot of environmental effects like that. Then when you pick your individual character, knowing that the poacher is going next, we have a move. Now the thing about this is obviously I can't close to the poacher. So before I even fight the poacher, it might make sense to try to lure the poacher towards us and to gang up on the hoodlum as the poacher approaches. To have the poacher do most of the movement and then for us to respond in turn. So my opening move is going to be shield, going to the hoodlum and standing to the north side so that shield is the most likely to be shot by the poacher when the poacher approaches. Additionally, I would like Diamond here, who's our ranger, and rangers in this game are a little bit more like rogues than what you would think, is going to then backstab the hoodlum. So my first 2 turns are going to be shield and diamond. So move up here. And then your abilities often in this game are bound to the weapon. So for instance, this old club that I am wielding does bonus damage if the target still has armor. So the best person to do an opening attack would be, of course, shield, because shield does more damage bashing armor. And then some of the characters will also have first aid. So sometimes they will be flowers on the field, which can act as first aid. But if someone's bleeding or poisoned or dying or on fire, first aid helps to resolve that condition. So let's go ahead and have shield. Bash the hoodlum. When you perform a melee attack on a free enemy, you engage them. An engaged unit can only attack an engaged opponent and has a higher chance of taking critical damage. Take advantage of this with your other units. An engaged unit is exposing their back, attack them from behind to get the bonus. So, if you want to disengage, you offer attacks of opportunity to the person you're engaged with, which is a problem. So don't do it unless you have to. And then I'm going to end Shield's turn. Then I'm going to pick Diamond here, and have Diamond move right on behind this hoodlum. Because Diamond has a stab ability, and this stab ability of Diamond's does 30% increased critical hit chance from behind. And this enemy's already engaged, so yeah, even better. Wasn't a crit, but it still did pretty good damage. And then that is my end of turn. Now what I could do in this case is move Diamond over next to Shield. Sometimes there is advantages to be had when you are standing adjacent to someone else. But in this case, I'm not going to do that so that Diamond can have a probably finishing backstab. Now, the other thing I should probably explain is the top. The way this works is when you kill enemy units, it raises your morale meter and allows you to claim victory faster. When you kill enough units to hit this marker here, which is called galvanized, you will do 50% bonus damage to the remaining enemies. And then this marker here makes the enemies flee. Now, it's worth mentioning that there are some path objectives to allowing enemies to flee battle, but a fled enemy will not give you experience. So if you're trying to min-max, you might want to kill everything. But if you're trying to roleplay or get some path progress, you might want to let them run. Additionally, how quickly you hit galvanized and how quickly you make them flee is driven by a character or the summary willpower of your group versus the summary willpower of the enemy group. So for instance, if our team had very little willpower and the enemy team had an immense amount of willpower, we would need to kill a lot more enemies to become galvanized and a lot more enemies to make them flee than if the inverse was true. So if we have a super high willpower team, we can galvanize and make them flee a lot faster. And then in this game, apart from other games, willpower is interestingly crit hit chance as well. Crit hit chance is driven off of dexterity and willpower. So willpower is not one of those, oh, I just, don't want to be, I don't want someone to cast, like, terror on me. I need willpower. Willpower plays a very different role in this game. All right, so let's end my turn, and then the poacher takes his turn. And is going to shoot shield, as I predicted. So this gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit more of the mechanics. So if we take a look at shield, shield has a bunch of stats here. So what are they? The top gray bar is armor. The left shield is guard. And then below is health. So armor protects health and maintains guard. And it must be repaired after each fight. So as your armor gets damaged, your guard is lowered. And guard reduces the damage of incoming attacks as long as the unit still has armor. Attacks from behind ignore 50% of this reduction. So if you have a lot of armor and you have a lot of guard, it protects you from actually taking hit point damage. With that said, the types of things that offer high guard are medium and heavy armor, which not all classes are going to have the opportunity to get. Oh, and it's also probably worth investigating what my starting traits actually are, because I didn't min-max them. So Shield, the Brute, has 5% bonus dexterity. Not ideal, but not terrible. Diamond has Strong for a Ranger. If only they could switch. We've got Jazz here with Clever. Clever's pretty good. Extra experience. And Cathanon has Bloodthirsty. Honestly, very good rolls. Bloodthirsty is pretty meta. Cool. Alright, so now it's my turn. And the idea that I had here was that I was going to try to lock down the poacher. So if you're wondering about that, if Cathanon takes a turn now, and then there is a end of round, I get 2 turns after that. So I only have to run halfway there now, and I can run the other half later. So this is a really good example of using a Valor point, which I'm not going to do. Cathanon has the ability, as a result of skills, to taunt. So it forces the target to engage and inflicts weakening for them for 1 round, and weakening reduces the damage that they do by 50%. And that little diamond there is a Valor point. Valor points are really useful to bank when you have easy fights like this one, and then you use those Valor points against stronger enemies when you feel overwhelmed or outnumbered. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that for Cathanon's specific weapon, it has an area of an effect, as you can see, and friendly fire is absolutely a thing. And not only that, your companions will get pissed if they get hurt by you. So, yeah, be very careful not to friendly fire, especially given that our scenario start was that we were apprentice friends. The goal of a party is actually to build positive relationships with one another. So for me to willy-nilly team damage would be fairly detrimental. All right, so I'm going to end Kath's turn here. And then what I was hoping to do with Jazz is to do enough damage that this hoodlum is going to be negated pretty early on. But actually, if we have 2 turns, I think what I'm going to do is have Jazz close towards the other poacher and shoot to start whittling down the guard. Now, Jazz does have an extra ability using a Valor Point to run a little bit further, but I don't need to do that because I'm already in range. So this is an example of friendly fire. If I try to shoot the hoodlum, as you can see, I have a 58% chance to hit Kath. It's in really small text. And then only an 18% chance to hit the hoodlum. So trying to fire at the hoodlum here would be a tragically terrible idea. I have 100% chance to hit the poacher here. So let's do that. Boom. Poacher hit. And that is the end of round. The hoodlum takes its turn. And as a result of that fight, Shield got poisoned. So I'm going to be losing health at the end of Shield's turn. So what I'd like to do here is to have, if we take a look at who takes their turn next, it will be the hoodlum. I'm going to have Dai try to kill off the hoodlum. Not quite. And then I'm going to have Dai move adjacent to Shield and bandage his poison so he doesn't take any poison damage. End of turn. Then I'm going to have Shield finish off the hoodlum. Or try to. Unfortunately, only did 3 of the 4 points needed, which is unfortunate. Bad luck. And then end turn. Hoodlum takes its turn, stabs me. I am poisoned yet again. Kath can take his turn before the archer. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is don't stand between my archer and the enemy. So I should either stand above and below. If I can stand behind him like this, it also offers the opportunity for someone like Diamond to catch up to this poacher. So I'll do that. Large sweeping hit. Done. And then Jazz, I think what I'm going to do is to try to finish off the hoodlum. I have a 81% chance to hit the hoodlum. I'm actually going to hit the run ability using my Valor Point because I don't want Shield to take any more damage. Get in position and kill the hoodlum. Done. And we're now galvanized because we hit the necessary kills to become galvanized as a group. And because I closed on this poacher can really only punch me, which is a very ineffective attack. So I don't want to be using Shield as much as I can because he's currently poisoned, so I would prefer to finish off this fight before Shield has to take a turn. But luckily, Diamond has no problem closing the gap and finishing the poacher off. And there we go. So at the end of the fight, it will show you the experience you get, the influence points you get, it will show you the gear that you get. We can loot all. It leaves the human remains behind. The reason to take human remains is like if you were a cannibal. And then down below, it will show you the results. So Shield leveled up and also has damaged gear. So the shield here and the angler rags that I have need repair. Okay, so continuing on, if we take a look at our companions, Shield has leveled up. So let's level them up. When you level up, you are given the choice of different specialization classes. So there's Vanguard. A Vanguard has a reckless charge, disengages and charges into a straight line, dealing 4 damage to all units in their path and applies slowdown for 1 second. Or 1 round, rather, where movement is reduced by half. There's Smasher. Smasher deals poison damage to all the units in the area and applies poisons to bleeding units. So if they're bled, they get poisoned. And then Destroyer. Destroyer has a heavy helmet and heavy armor. So the other two have medium gear, and the Destroyer has heavy gear and has a weakening blow. deals damage and weakens the enemy, reducing the damage that they do by 50% for 3 rounds. I am going to choose Destroyer, mostly because the other classes are not well geared to become a tank class, and Destroyer is a pretty good like tank build for shield here. Then additionally, we can then choose stat points. So I think what I'm going to do is actually choose not to level up shield anymore at the moment for some, not exactly min-maxing, but strategic reasons. So as far as the gear that we got, let's see. We got a dagger here. So this new dagger can poison the enemies. So the stab skill is an ambushing, and this new dagger is a poisoning dagger. The poisoning dagger does more, has more base dexterity, so I'm going to switch to it. So instead of backstabbing, we can poison targets, where they lose 5% of their maximum health each turn, and the poison stacks. Then we also got a bow. So the bow nope, wrong character. Jazz. So Jazz has a bow with just a basic 5-meter shot, 4 to 7 damage, and this new bow is a vicious shot, so it will knock them back, which might be more helpful to be able to have knockback as part of our weapon set. So this is what a location will look like. It took me a while to realize that these locations can be panned and rotated by holding right mouse button. Really handy to be able to find certain stuff. So for instance, there's a hay pile back here with wheat that we could steal, not that I'm planning on stealing, that would be pretty impossible to see if you were looking like this. Sometimes there are collectibles that are not stolen. So for instance, this hemp would be one, where we can pick up the hemp and it's not a theft. And then there is interactable objects throughout. So for instance, this barrel here has grease and fish oil, but we have to steal that. I'm not planning on going down the life of crime for this specific series. Then we can inspect the individual NPCs, or we can talk to them.
When I think of how many people don't shoe their ponies, it makes me want to pull out the little hair I have left. Tell you what, buy a horse from us, and I'll throw in the horseshoes for free.
Alright, well, I don't have the kind of money to just, like, buy a new horse. So I'm not going to be doing that. But when we do want a new horse, getting a free horseshoe from these guys would be great. So in terms of Macho's gear, Macho came with saddlebags, which increases carry capacity. Horseshoes increase your party speed by 3%. And then as a result, this location has been added to our map, and it will show that there is a quest of if the horseshoe fits, which is receiving a free horseshoe when we buy a horse. And it's listed here in the objectives on the left. Got some cloth from a random barrel. And then we are heading into the capital city, Stromkamp. So discovering Stromkamp increased our knowledge points. And what I am going to be doing is saving up for career plans. I'd said that in the details here that I was not planning on min-maxing, but career plans is just so important that I think it's worth rushing to. Can you quick travel? I think there's quick travel much later on in the game, but no, the discovered locations can't be quick travel to. It's only like trade posts that you build or something like that. So yeah, I'm going to be saving up my knowledge points. So career plans requires 2 knowledge points to unlock, to learn, and I only have the 1. So when we get a little bit more knowledge points, I'll be able to get career plans, and then I'll be able to level up shield in a way that I'd prefer. So there's a bunch of trade caravans that move around, and what they sell is kind of baked into their icon. So like this one has like trade goods, this one has armor, or gear, I should say. And then once they get into Stromkamp, they kind of disappear. So now that we're inside Stromkamp, there's a bunch of different things to do. This derelict tavern is part of a DLC that I don't have access to. There is the Three Hairs Market, where we can buy food and trade goods. The clinic, where we can craft apothecary stuff and buy medicine. The inn, which we can pick up contracts and recruit new people. The town hall, where we can talk to the mayor. And the forge, where we can purchase repair equipment and forge and smith. I'm going to be heading into the inn first. So inside the inn, certain things are color-coded. So we have the innkeep back here. We've got Wilt, Degerello, and Sandian, who are all recruitable NPCs. We have the emissary, who gives out bounties. And then the informant, who informs us about the region's main scenario quests for a fee. I'm hoping to avoid having to use the informant, unless we're stuck, but we'll talk to him anyway.
Psst. You. Yeah, you. You looking for work? I can give you tips and point you toward the best missions. The kind that pays much better than the measly rewards the Mercenary Guild has to offer. Of course, you'll then have to meet the client and meddle in other people's affairs. But at the end of the day, it's the number of crowns in your purse that counts, right?
So here are the tips which you buy for influence. We could hypothetically afford one of them, but I'm not going to be doing that. We can also inspect the people here to be recruited. So one is a solitary loafer. Not very good stats, and they're a swordsman. We've got a volunteer. So a volunteer brute might not be a bad recruit, but I'm actually not looking to recruit anyone right now just because the active recruiting is going to cost money and influence, which we don't have a whole lot of. But if we did want to recruit him, we could talk to him.
Join you. I'll no longer be a burden for my family.
And then spend influence and gold to be able to recruit. And then every time you return back to these locations, you're going to get a different subset of people. So, actually, in the case of, so he wants 16 wage. Is he level 1? Okay, so he, despite the fact that he's a volunteer, wants more wages than we even pay ourselves. So, yep. Maybe not right now. Thick-skinned loafer. So loafers carry reduction. So, not that interesting for that either. If we wanted to talk to the innkeep has...
It's not often you see new faces around here. Well, apart from the Edoranian war refugees, that is. Feel free to come back often. There's always folk looking for work around here, especially since all the fighting started across the border.
So you can pay to rest and recover valor points. These would be guaranteed valor points that you would save up between battles. You can sing if I had a bard with a lute. And then there is alcohol, rum, food, and recipes. Which we can get into later once I have a cook. And last but not least, the emissary.
Might you be looking for work? Our role as emissaries is to ensure that all service requests are fulfilled. We regularly update our job offers.
So, I'm going to be taking on the easier job requests. So, I'll vanquish a gang, help desperate refugees, and vanquish another gang. In the quest, it will show you the rewards, the difficulty, the direction, east, northwest, and then who you're specifically looking for. And 3 contracts is the most that I can have, at least for now. So we exit, and I'll show you the other locations as well. So we have the forge, where we can forge gear, a blacksmith. So pairing professions with classes is very important because different professions will offer different stat bonuses. So for instance, a tinkerer gets critical hit as they level up, whereas a blacksmith gets strength. So I'm going to have Cathanon become our blacksmith here. Now the way these work is that there's 3 different tiers to professions, and as you level up these tiers, you can switch professions, but you lose all the progress to the next tier. So if, for instance, Cathanon leveled up from novice to the next tier, if I switched him to something else and then switched back, he would be the next tier. So you lose the experience towards the next tier, but not the tier itself. So you can switch around your professions if you want, if you need to. And then I don't really have anything to forge, but here would be the menu where we can make like throwing knives, sickles, hatchets, targs, and rags. And then the icon that I was referring to earlier, if I made rags, for instance, I would gain knowledge progress for having done it the first time. Whereas if I make a targ, it reveals a new recipe in the compendium. So there are different bonuses to making different gear, and as you can see, a lot of it requires raw resource acquisition, like iron and wood and leather.
You can use my anvil. I can also repair your armor. Oh, and I'm looking to hire a skilled blacksmith, if you happen to know one.
So I'm going to sell him the bow and the dagger that we don't use, and then anything that is green is temporarily on sale. So normally these would be sold at 5 apiece. They're currently sold at 4 apiece. I'm going to buy a few extra repair kits because we, as adventuring apprentices, start off with fewer than normal. And it's really nice to be able to repair your gear. All right, I'll check out the other locations. So here's the apothecary. The apothecary.
My concoctions can heal the most grievous injuries. Be sure to hold on to the vials after using them.
She sells medicine to be able to heal injuries. So after a battle, any of the armor that you have damaged needs repair. And then if you lose health, you have a chance to become injured. And you would need medicine to heal those, or you would need to talk to her, because she can heal you directly as well. The same is true of the blacksmith. The blacksmith can repair your gear instead of you using your raw materials. And then she also has recipes. And then there is also the alchemist profession. So the alchemist profession, I just gave it to Jazz. Not that Jazz is necessarily going to keep it, but it is a dexterity profession, so it would be good for someone who's an archer. Allows you to craft and brew concoctions here. So we have hand bomblets and recoil bomblets and invigorating oils and medicines. So collecting snow irises and comfrey when we have an empty vial allows me to make medicine, which is pretty affordable compared to buying medicine raw. And then anytime you use your medicine, so I have 5. If I used medicine, I would get an empty vial out of it. So, you know, you can recycle your glass, in other words. So having an apothecary is really nice. All right, next up will be the town hall.
Are you mercenaries? I'll have you know that we do not take kindly to refugees in these parts. Why, you ask? Because they have overrun our streets and are now taking to the roads. Erdogan is sending our way anything with legs and a mouth that cannot wield a sword. You have your work cut out for you. There is no lack of honest folk in need of help to fend off the refugee menace.
This gives you a little bit of insight as to what the region's scenario is going to be. There's a refugee crisis here in Tiltren County. So without spoiling anything, obviously it's going to involve the war in Edoran, and the refugees here in Tiltren. And the last but not least, we have the market, where you can buy stuff.
You touch it, you buy it.
So right now, apples are on sale. So I'll buy some extra apples. I'm also going to buy some salt. 5 of it, I guess. No, I'll buy 10. We got meats over here.
Refugees. I understand there's a war in Edoran, but that doesn't mean they can just help themselves.
We've got trade goods.
Come. Take a look at my wares.
So selling leather, hemp, comfrey, immortal bloom, barber's kits if you want to change the way you look, and then trade goods. So trade goods are useful if you buy them here and then travel to another town. Because I'm trying to do the Tiltren County's scenario, trade goods mean nothing to me right now because I don't want to actually travel outside of Tiltren, so we're not going to be doing that. But if you wanted to, like, buy leather so that you could, do some smithing or something like that, this guy would be the one to talk to.
Please, can you spare some food?
Sure. I will hand you bread.
Thank you so much. I will pray for you.
And that gave us 10 influence.
For a few crowns, I can polish your armor. Please. I'm so hungry.
Okay.
Here we go. A little spit and polish here and there. Done. So shiny I could go blind just looking at it. Thank you for all the money. It will be well spent.
And he robbed us. Well, that's what you would come to expect, I suppose. Thank you for tuning in to Wartales, which originally streamed live on Twitch July 27th as a marathon. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below, but please keep in mind that I'm relatively new to the game, and this was also streamed once as a marathon, meaning feedback cannot be incorporated. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, like this marathon, you can go to Rhadamant.com for my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams, as well as a link to Twitch. And if you would like to join my online gaming community as well, you can go to Rhadamant.com or a link in the description of this video to join Discord. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and those that turned out for the marathon, and also viewers like you that tuned in on YouTube and made it all the way to the credits. So thank you so very much. I hope to catch you in next episode or an upcoming stream of mine. Farewell, my fellow mercenaries.